Ba-do-ba-do-do-do. Good morning. Well, today we're going to dive right into it, baby. And I think what I'm going to do is charge ahead, probably with some pencil testing. I don't normally work this way, but I'm thinking about letting a few scenes get the animation dialed in and let them stack up, and then go in and do ink and paint kind of in one fell swoop. But before I do that, I wanted to look at the idea of making some mods to this painting. I'm not happy with it, but it's certainly a good starting point. In principle, what I want to do is I want to make it, I want to simplify it a bit. And so here's what I'm thinking would be a possible way to do that is, number one, you would blur the painting a little bit, but then you'd turn around and not pixelate it. What's the image effect? That posterize it. You'd posterize it. Reduce it to a more limited range of tones or values. It doesn't look like what I was just doing when I went live was I applied the blur here, and I was trying to see if OpenToonz/Tahoma has a posterize effect, and if it does, I'm not seeing it. Now there's some of these that I've never really fiddled around with. Obviously these are in image adjustment, so you wouldn't necessarily think that's where you'd find them, but let me look at stylize. Ah, there it is. There's posterize. Okay, let's do it. Let's see if we can actually accomplish this directly in Tahoma as opposed to having to go out to Krita. Okay, this is actually basically what I was after. I mean, it's obviously way too extreme, but let's turn this effect off. Okay, yeah, this is kind of good news. Okay, so the default blur is 45 pixels. I just want to mush it out a bit, so let's just make it 10 pixels. Okay, we'll see if this works. And now we're going to go to posterize, and you can pick however many levels of tonality you want. So if I really crank it up, I'm getting almost back to a look along the lines of what the painting was before I did anything. And actually, I would say, folks, this is kind of useful, because what I'm thinking is, in some cases you may take a photo. If you took a photo and then did this to it, first blur it in order to smush all the colors together. Now you could take the blur out and see what happens. I mean, that kind of works too, but you can see all the brush work here. Let me reduce this to, yeah, this is getting too contrasty. And sometimes it would actually be quite useful to do this type of effect and then go ahead and paint over it. And you could use a photographic background as kind of a starting point. So here we have, if we turn on our preview anyway, so this is the painting. There's just a lot of like scribbling and scumbling that for me is not quite marrying together with the characters the way I would prefer. Hey Yvette, how are you this morning? So with that in mind, actually this setting isn't too bad. I think I had a blur of, yeah, 10 pixel blur. Let me reduce it to 5 and just see what happens. I think I'm going to stick with the 10. So we got a 10 pixel blur. And how goes the authoring? My lovely wife Valerie's been working on actually two different book concepts in parallel. So, hey, whatever, So that's interesting. So 8 levels of tonality. I'm going to go with that for the moment just because I want to get moving on to the next thing. So save all, and I'm just going to hit Control-Shift-R and just take a look at it. Because, I do think I want to do some repainting for sure, okay, on this painting. And also think that the posterize effect is a little gratuitous. I mean, it's obviously an effect. So in terms of being a good substitute for an actual painting, I don't think we're where we need to be. But if we can test it procedurally like this with just a couple effects in line, then that's a good thing, because we're not having to go in and destroy the painting and spend a bunch of time on something that turned out to be a waste of time. So what I would do in this case is I would take this posterized version of it, and let me make this full size, by the way. It's half resolution at the moment. Okay, so now we've almost got a decent marrying of the characters into their background. If we are like this, where we want a defocused background, that's different. When we want a sharp background, I've been feeling like maybe this background's pretty good, because when I painted it, and I did it directly in Tahoma, I didn't even do it in Krita, I deliberately limited my palette to 3 value levels: dark, medium, and light. And what I've been finding is, in terms of, well, it's kind of good for anybody who's learning to paint, actually, to really limit your palette. Kindlevella for serial fiction. Oh, very good, very good, very good. That's excellent. Keep rocking, Yvette. By the way, I see a flaw here. His thumb is not filled in. But anyway, if you limit your palette, it forces you to see in your mind a simplified set of tones, which, if you're trying to do standard, like wildlife painting or whatever, it's really, really helpful, because it forces you to stop seeing symbols in your mind that represent, let's say you're trying to paint a picture of an owl, like I have a painting of an owl right there on the wall that I painted. Your brain puts symbols in your mind all the time. Everything about your reality is, in fact, a story you are telling yourself. And you can prove that this is true, because if there's somebody on the other side of the... Well, I've used this example, actually. The example I've given is if I were to show you this, and I say, well, okay, and by the way, this is a little maquette of Golek, okay? And I said, what do you see? You'd say, well, I see Golek's face. And I'd say, no, you don't. No, you don't. Nee, nee, nee. You see the back of Golek's head. And I've made the point somewhat poetically that people see things differently because people see different things. I think it's a very important principle to keep in mind. That means somebody can be in the same room with you and they're actually having a slightly different experience than you do. Now, of course, there's a lot of overlap, but this gets into a lot of philosophical mumbo-jumbo. But it's informative as an artist because it makes you ask yourself, well, and it's what one of my high school art teachers called, or it was college, I can't remember which, but called symbols. You're not drawing what you see, you're drawing a symbol that represents what it means to you. So that's why when people draw faces or hands or whatever, they always tend to the amateurish mistakes across the broad spectrum of budding artisans. The mistakes are the same. You see it in filmmaking too. Writing, in any area of creativity, we see people who have not developed their craft. For some reason, they seem to make the same kinds of mistakes. And you think, well, why is that? And it's really because we're extremely attached to the symbols in our mind. Now, this gets into all kinds of, controversial topics about how we as a culture think. For me in the socio-political sphere, it has implications there too. A lot of things that I've been learning, I've been studying the markets and price movement and things like that. A lot of things about chaos and the way we represent things in our mind, all these topics sort of bleed over top of each other, right? And so socio-politically, this has relevance because the divide that we have in our country right now is in large part because of large swaths of people limiting the amount of information they take in, and then they build up a mythology and a story that they tell themselves about what is true, with oftentimes very, very little evidence to support what they think is true. And so then you ask yourself, well, why would you do that? And the reason you would do that is usually two things. It's because of fear, because maybe you've been implanted with, you know, something you should be afraid of. That's why I tend to lean to the left more than to the right these days, because I see that having been done in the last political cycle, where the whole rhetoric was be very afraid. If Joe Biden gets elected, you're going to lose your retirement. You're going to lose your country. And it's always these vague terms that are very non-specific that are designed to get people who basically don't do much research to be afraid. Because why would you do that? Simple. Money and power. You're going to get their vote. Okay, so the point is this problem of our brains don't actually allow us to have an accurate picture of reality. Is a human proclivity that's inescapable. Now, if you're aware of it, then you can keep it in check and weigh the information that's coming down the pike against maybe other information sources that might help you balance it out. What does this have to do with painting? Well, the problem with painting and drawing is twofold vis-a-vis what I'm doing, because on the one hand, people don't actually usually draw or paint what they see. There's your problem. That's the problem in a nutshell. When you use the posterize effect to reduce something to a smaller range of values, it's way easier to see the shapes. And the magic secret that I would venture to say most really accomplished artists with a high level of craft would agree with this statement is if you accurately draw the shapes or paint the shapes, then when you zoom out, you're going to find that magically you have accurately painted the subject. And so most people don't do that. So you don't work down from shapes and then zoom out. What you typically do is you look at the subject and then you form a picture in your mind and you try to reproduce it based on what you feel and what you think about that thing. It's really crazy. So when somebody says that to learn to draw is really to learn to see, they're completely right. Now, I said it's a twofold issue. The reason it's a twofold issue is because we're drawing cartoons. The whole point of what we're doing here is symbols, right? So a question one might ask oneself is it actually important to have really good, hey Ashnan, good morning. Is it important to have a high level of craft as an artist, as someone who is drawing or painting, in order to make a cartoon? And I would say no, actually it's not. I think Matt Groening proved that with The Simpsons. You know, he's not a fine artist. So you can operate in the realm of symbols all the time. What does that have to do with what I just did here, putting a posterize effect on my background? Well, I just was kind of feeling like there's a little bit of a disconnect between the image, the character of the imagery in the characters versus the character of the imagery in the background painting. Now, simplifying might not be the right answer, actually. Some of this was actually pretty good. This was done with kind of an oil paintbrush, and I think it worked. Whereas over here, I dove in with a pencil, and I don't think it worked. This is where you get into too much of a scumbly, bumbly effect that I felt runs counter to the aesthetic I'm trying to go for, right? So anyway, I was hoping maybe a posterize effect would somewhat help with that. And I think it did, but probably what I'm going to want to do is, A, I'm going to want to take these stupid looking balloons out anyway, because I was kind of planning to do that. And then B, I think you'd probably want to go back in with an oil paint brush and smooth some of it out, right? So it's not a perfect solution, but it kind of gets us there. And it's interesting how you can use plugins. Again, for those who are late to the party, all I did was take this background painting and I put it first through a blur. I just blurred it a little bit, 10 pixels to be specific, and then I added a posterize effect with I think 8 levels of value. If you only did 2 levels of value, you'd be there. And the cool thing is you can just kind of dial it in, right? There's usually about 2, 3, maybe 4 levels of value, right? So anyway, I think that helped a bit. And as I said, today I'm going to go ahead and slam through some pencil testing. And so I'm actually going to create a brand new scene. We've got now this, we've got the, I'm going to make this half resolution again, by the way. But we've got the sort of pixelated, or I'm sorry, posterized effect baked into that background. We'll compare it later and see if we want to keep it or change it a little bit. But now it's time to get moving. I got another shot I need to do with the prints. I got to do a close-up on him. And there's TNR. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to actually, and forgive me guys if you're new, please don't run away. In fact, if you haven't hit the subscribe button, please do it. I'm going to start being like a YouTuber and tell people, hit the subscribe button, hit the subscribe button. No, I'm not going to hammer it too much, but I'm actually going to take a couple minute break. So what I'm going to do here is it's going to take me about probably 3 minutes to go refresh my I'm just creating a playlist here, if you will. Okay, so what I'm going to do is loop the storyboard and be back in 3 to 5 minutes, and then we're gonna start going bananas on some pencil test, animation. Really, I've only got 6.5 minutes to get this episode done, so I'm getting a little hungry and I want to drive through to the finish. And I'm loving some of the stuff I see here in the storyboard. So give me like 3 to 5 minutes to take a quick break, and then I'm gonna get back and get right into the next few scenes or shots. All right, see you in a bit. Okay, guys, we're back. Now, I want to be, where are my glasses? I forgot my glasses. These are good glasses, by the way. If you look at a computer screen a large part of the day, and you're old like me, old and decrepit, and you need to give your eyes a little relief from time to time, these glasses help immeasurably. Now, there are things you can put over your computer screen, but the idea is to block out the blue part of the color spectrum. It's quite egregious to your eyes. Okay, so you can see there's lots of fun stuff that's going to be happening over the next. Well, it looks like, how long did we play? We probably got about. It was about a 2-minute break. It looks like. Okay, so you can see all kinds of fun drama happening, and most of it in this whole sequence does revolve around the stuff that's happening inside and outside of the tent. So let's go back. I'm going to I'm on the other screen on the storyboard, but basically what I want to do here with Tahoma, the first thing I'm going to do is, I guess I will do the shot. I was thinking maybe not, because if you go back a little bit, obviously we could repurpose this shot for this shot, and indeed we probably should, but since I'm kind of thinking along the lines of pencil tests, I'm also thinking maybe I'll go ahead and redraw the guy just for fun in pencil test mode in order to experiment with characterization and just going a little further with frame by frame animation. I want to think about what I'm doing before I go too far, but I think probably a good approach might be to just cut this shot to the clipboard. Okay, so as I've mentioned many times, the reason I use Tahoma and not OpenToonz is really only because of this one feature for the most part. Not that there aren't other aspects of it that are quite cool. But my purpose with Tahoma is basically just because we've got the ability to cut and paste. So I'm going to actually cut this to the clipboard as well, because that's the storyboard image that guides me. So I've got this as a colored guide, and now I'm going to paste into the same image sequence this image from the storyboard. Okay? So that's that. If I was working in Krita, what I'd probably do is, this is kind of a convoluted explanation, but basically what I'd probably do is shrink this down, fill in, excuse me, go to the wider shot, fill in what's missing, and then move forward from there. That wouldn't be a bad way to work. But I think what I'll do here is just hit the B key and immediately save this as 528. File. We'll just save all. By saving all, it actually is going to take these images that I just cut in from the clipboard and save them to the extras folder as well. So this is shot number 528. And I want a plain old pencil, because ultimately what I'm going to do is put the ink and paint on a separate level anyway. And I tend, for whatever stupid reason, to enjoy doing pencil tests in red. Don't even ask me why. I'm not even sure why. One thing that might be worth doing here, by the way, is grabbing color 0 and doing a fill operation. That didn't quite work. Of course, I wouldn't know either because there's nothing behind it. Okay, forget that idea. We'll skip that one for now. I'm just going to crank the opacity down a little bit so it's really light. Okay, so this is actually pretty much where the, let me double check, but I think this is where the last shot of the prince left off. Yeah, pretty much. It's not exactly the same pose, but it's close. Okay, and in the last shot I did yesterday, the prince is basically starting a sentence where he says, any girl would be happy to something. And obviously where he's going with it is that any girl would be happy to be able to marry him. Hey, dead pianist. Which, of course, TNR doesn't quite buy that. So, let's hit the N key. Going to kind of sort of work at actual resolution as much as possible, I think. And now I'm thinking about how I want to express the emotion of what he's going to be saying here. So, and again, the reason I'm doing the pencil test thing a little bit more, the frame-by-frame animation, is I really want to let the timing sneak back up into my process a little more. The whole idea of animation timing and really working out how things are going to move. So if you're going to do that, then probably the first place to start would be with very simple shapes that just let you get the timing blocked in. So I'm going to start with this pose here basically. So I'm just going to draw this oval. Okay. So what we'll kind of assume here is that we're starting with the part of the shot where his arms were out. Okay. So we've got a few things we can put in here as guides. What I've been finding lately is if you kind of draw some shapes that encompass the whole 3D volume that you're trying to work with, it makes it easier to be on character and also to keep your drawings symmetrical-ish. So I'm going to start with the word happy. So he says any girl would be happy to... Okay, and by the way, this is also where, if you're doing this at home, this is where rotoscoping could help you too. Pull out your webcam and act it out. So I just say, geez, any girl would be happy to... Okay, and then figure out how long did that take. In my case, what I would do is I'd break it down to 8 frames a second, so I'd leave out every third frame, basically. And just see what the movement feels like. When I've done that, which I typically do in Blender just because it's easier, it does... What you find happens is a lot of the little bits of movement that a normal person does when you rotoscope, obviously, you can cut it out. You cut a lot out. And you wind up with just the key poses, and it's pretty easy to sort of figure out what you're trying to convey. But here I'm going to go ahead and allow his arms to be out. We know he's got this, so I'm going to draw this center line as well. This is just a guide down the center of his body, so we kind of just keep things shaped more or less correctly. We know he's got this leather accoutrement, and we know that he's got kind of a jewel encrusted on his chest. So if I didn't have this guideline, I can tell you right now, I can see that I would have probably put this too far to the right. So that's that. So if he said, let me check something. I'm going to drag this down here. Now, as you can see, I mentioned this yesterday, that the minute there may be a way to mitigate what I'm describing here, but this is what I've noticed is the minute you grab these start and end points and set them yourself, as opposed to letting Tahoma sort of decide how long it needs to be based on what you've done, all of a sudden, from as far as I can tell, from then on, it's up to you, because I haven't yet figured out a way to get Tahoma to go back to sort of managing that for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, what's the overall length of the shot that I'm doing? So he said about 2 seconds. So we'll be liberal and we'll say 3. Okay, so here's 3 seconds, and he says, okay, so I'm seeing the word happy right around here. Okay, so again, I'm just getting the basic timing blocked in. So, boop, boop. Yeah, right there. So this is straight ahead animation, and I'm going to hit the D key because it is a pencil test. I'm going to give myself a little latitude here to just use the drawing that's working and just make some modifications to it. No reason we can't do it that way. So he says, any girl would be happy to, and then of course Tianara interrupts him. To what? Marry his royal highness in his fancy schmancy robes? I don't remember what her line of dialogue is, but it's something like that. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to build out. We're going to build out the animation. Okay. And so what I'm feeling here is probably here I'm kind of feeling like something needs to happen with his arms. So we don't need it in there anymore. Okay, so I'm seeing one thing I want to change. I'm going to take this and I'm actually going to flip it 100% on the horizontal and see if I like it. So it's kind of like he's talking into the air. Well, any girl would be happy to. Okay, and then right here, this is probably slightly low. And I'm kind of seeing his arms dropping back down to his side. So it's like he's really that oblivious to, he's really oblivious to how what he is saying affects her. But that's kind of typical of of Vespar. I'm not going to worry about his facial expressions. We're going to have another level of going in there and making some mods to punch up his facial expressions. At any point in time, we can do that by just making a duplicate drawing and then making some adjustments. I think, let me see here. Boop. Yeah, okay. I'm going to hit undo, and it looks like undo doesn't work for what I just did, so that's not a good thing, but the world will keep on turning. So to make my life simpler, I'm actually going to split this into 2 levels. We'll kind of see later why, but it will make it a little simpler to deal with splitting it up into other drawings as we go, so no big deal. Okay, so okay, if there was a slight pause on happy, say but right there. Right here, I'm going to make a duplicate, stretch this down, and again, kind of making a, he's kind of, I'm not gonna necessarily mess around with it too much in 3D space. In other words, I'm not gonna rotate his head just to say I did it. You know what I mean? It's if there's a good reason to, I will. But if we can repurpose one drawing of the head in kind of a 3/4 view, then we might as well do so. There's no reason to add a bunch of extra. So now she's gonna say to what? And I think when she interrupts him, he should actually snap back to her. Boop. Okay. So now that makes this too long because we're actually going to give a little more time to Vespar and a little less time to Tianara. So I'm going to delete that. And now we're just going to go back. And again, the first step is just figuring out the timing of things. Okay, and it feels to me like this is slightly too late. So he says, any girl would be happy to. And then he would kind of wait. Boom. And then she would say something, and that would get his attention. So I'm going to go like this. And I could, obviously, reuse one of the other drawings, but there's not really a good reason to. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to do the same thing again. If you hit minus on the horizontal, it flips it. Okay, so now what he's going to do is he's going to perk up. Alright, back to the beginning. Okay, so she gets his attention, and we'll see that there's going to be a little bit of facial animation called for here to sort of get everything in there that needs to be in there. So, okay. All right, and now I would say this shot is actually not helping. We got too much movement. It seemed like a good idea and then became not such a good idea. So, okay. So, what I'm going to do now is get the key poses in there. And you know what? Why don't we just go ahead, if we're going to be, let's go ahead and just put the facial animation on another level. So, B key. We can always delete them later. Alright, so I'm going to again go to my standard pencil, and now I'll go ahead and do this in blue just so it stands out, and I want to really think about what I'm doing now. Okay, the first thing would be, let me make that a little darker. And I'm not going to worry about his mouth. Ultimately, that's just going to be garden variety lip sync. So, it's a gorgeous day in Brooklyn. Took a walk in tiny nature preserve and lots of photos. Excellent. And filming a family of egrets. Very, very good. Yeah, the weather's finally supposed to break today. So now the question is, should there be a change in mid pose here? Maybe. Let's see. Let's put it in there, and if we decide we don't like it, whoops, not following my guide, we don't like it, then we'll just change it. I want to get him back to his normal eyes, though. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Okay, so this is going to be more like this. Let's go back. Keep the pupils basically in the same place. Okay. So yeah, we're actually almost getting into Disney territory here. I feel like, in terms of the way I'm working with the acting, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. Okay. Alright, and then this is where she gets his attention. So I want to start here and say, boom. Alright, so what's going to happen there? There's a lot of ways you could play this, but the interruption would, he's kind of almost talking to himself. I'm going to do this in 2 quick steps. I'm going to go ahead and do a real quick startle thing. And then he turns his attention to her. Yeah, drawing tablet. Wish someone would add Krita into Blender at some point. Oh my gosh. That would be something. Yeah, I'm using a XP Pen Digital Artist 15.6. There it is. Wait, that's the computer screen. Ah, there it is. There's the tablet. XP Pen Digital Artist 15.6 has 6 buttons, which I really don't use. And there you go. There you go. Now I got to realign my webcam. Okay. Back to work. Any girl would be happy. Okay. This feels like it should be one more. And I think I'll probably move that down. Here. D key. So that I can. This is going to be really the one case of drawing in actual 3D. So we got to get from here to here. So what I want to do is put a very, very small tween in here. Very small tween. I'm going to keep the top of his head kind of anchored. Yeah, that would probably be good. So pretty much straight on view here. Now the problem we're going to have is that because it is on separate levels, I can't just hit the greater than minus then signs to. So I'm using the up and down arrows here. So I can see that in terms of my guides I've already made a mistake, so I just lowered it a little bit. Yeah, these guides are quite helpful. Obviously the final drawing we wouldn't want to have those goggles in there. Yeah, that kind of works. And frankly, this would be an eye, this would be a blink normally. Okay, and this drawing probably should be deleted. I didn't mean to put that in there. Turn the onion skins off. They're kind of distracting things. Boom. Okay, and then here, oh, sorry. This is supposed to be the eyes level. Okay, let's see what we have. Any girl would be happy to. Boom. Okay. Again, a little too late here and a little too early on the next one, so we'll give that half a second. Question. Do we want to... Let's go ahead and put an extra tween in there just for fun. We'll see if putting a little startle effect makes it play better. It might be a little too extreme, but it's worth a try. Okay, not too bad. Boop. Okay, so this is a little too early. And this is a little too early as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Probably 1 second would do the trick. And I don't think we need a tween on that other turn of the head. And then she starts talking, and then it jumps, and then it'll cut to her. Okay, so not too bad, actually. I'm liking what I see. Again, I'm going to be firm on lip sync that there's no reason to actually have it in there. We're going to want to reference this drawing a little bit. Mainly, I would say the bottom of his chin needs to be delineated quite clearly. This is a one frame tween. It's not going to be too big of a deal. Now I'm going to take this entire sequence and drag it back over here. Go ahead and clamp these guys together. And then here, same thing. What I'm going to do is take the preview on the show off so that I can just have another window that's got, basically on the other window I'm seeing that. Just so I don't lose perspective on the proportions of this guy. So now, as I said, what we're going to do is build this up. So I'm just going to make a few little changes and start dialing in his characterization. Okay, again here, based on what I'm seeing, this is a little bit short. Maybe a tiny bit narrow. Okay, that feels pretty good. Arguably, this is only a teensy bit too high. Okay, and then here we're back to this pose, which basically in the other drawing we would square his chin off about there, and his nose, by the way, is about there. So, okay. Curious. There is a way in Tahoma, I believe, to merge channels. I wonder if it's possible to merge this TLV level into one. I've never tried it. Reframe. Now you could collapse it into a. If you wanted to do it non-destructively, actually the thing to do would be hit Control-Shift down arrow and just collapse it into a. You know, if I'm happy with the timing and everything, we'll just call it a sub X sheet. I very much like what I'm seeing here. Okay. So now the zillion-dollar question is, do we want to, because this is actually kind of critical. Let me go back up here and turn this back on. All right, I'm going to shrink this down so it sort of fits the new drawing. In order to make a quick comparison, and indeed, okay, it is what I thought. All right, so I'm going to hit undo, undo, undo. Okay, the thing I wanted to check was whether I needed to chop the top of his helmet out of this oval that I drew as a guide, or do I need to add to it? And it looks like I need to add to it. Okay, so meaning basically we've got this little region right here. This is actually really important, what I'm doing right now, because I've seen this happen so many times where you knock out a pencil test, and the energy of it, the movement, everything feels pretty good, and then you go to do your ink and paint and realize that there's major aspects of the underlying structure that you haven't really pinned down in the pencil test, and as a result you wind up sort of guessing when you go to do the ink, and invariably wind up with something that doesn't quite look right, or you wind up getting a little off character or whatever it might be. So what I'm basically doing here is I'm saying, nope, we're not going to do that. We're going to go through and make sure that we've measured properly. This helmet thingy dingy, which I've kind of made clear over the last few days, is in fact called a thingy dingy. Should be about like that. So we've got a space of about this much at the top of the helmet that is not present in any of the drawings. So that's the kind of thing that I've found will bite me in the hiney if I'm not careful. So let's get it in there. Let's get things measured properly. Not compromise. Let's do our work well. Okay, this is pretty simple. Again, 1 frame tween. Okay, that's better. Okay, so this is going to loop around like that. This is kind of a throwaway, frankly, to a degree. And this, again, is going to loop around like that. Okay, so like I said, build it up. So with that, what that means is you've got a little bit of thickness here. A little bit of thickness here. Let's mark that right there. Okay. And now what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, this is where it reconvenes with the helmet. So again, measuring. And with that, we can actually sketch in what we're supposed to see. So it's kind of a, it's a bit of an engineering process, and it's a bit of a artsy-fartsy process, but it's actually both working together. Okay, that's coming down like that. Probably that was a little bit high. This looks good. Could maybe even introduce a wrinkle right there. And here we're going to definitely have a little bit of dynamics in play. Sehr gut. Sehr gut. So this is going to kind of fall down like that. It's just a little bit of a, the weight of it having an effect. And actually here what we would actually see is this would pull this way, and this would still be stretching that way a little bit. This is obviously wrong. Okay, so now the question I'm asking myself is, structurally, are we in good shape yet? And I'd say we're close. We're not quite there. The next thing we probably want to consider is if this part of his vesture, or whatever you call it, the costume, comes down to here. So I'm going to just mark that because his body really isn't changing position too much. So what we would see here is this is kind of pulling a little bit. Now since this is here, let's mark that and say dynamics wise it wouldn't move to the right, probably. I mean, you could, if you were doing really high frame rate animation, I could totally see where maybe you would let it actually spring in the opposite direction a bit, but I don't think that really makes sense here. So I'm just holding my stylus in this spot so things can kind of get back to where they're supposed to be in the first place. This one could be a little off. So there's that. Okay, so he's here. Just animating straight ahead. Good. Okay. Yep, that's here. Slight stretch. We'll let that whip around the opposite direction, and then he snaps back. Here, kind of the opposite. Little bit of a curvature there. We'll call that an S. As he's moving, maybe that would flow out a little bit and pull in a little bit. And this is therefore wrong. It actually needs to be more straight up and down, and then flopping over. Except the problem here is that the level of curvature suggests that it's in motion when in fact it's not anymore. This is where you got to be careful working it. You know, at 8 frames per second, you really need to let stuff land. So gravity says it's here. right? You could do two drawings. I mean, you could, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to split the difference and give it a little bit of curvature. And say that's probably about right. So, okay, boop, boop, boop. Okay, is there anything missing? This feels a little thin right here. I want to fatten that up just a bit. But I'm trying to really be vigilant here. Like, is there anything that feels wrong? This could, this could maybe poof out a little bit, give it a little bit more life, if you will. This could maybe poof out a little bit since it is a one-frame tween, but I don't like that. I'm going to undo that and do that again. Just going to have a really slight bit of dynamics there. Here, not sure if I'm buying that. The reality is it'd be pretty straight. Okay, basically nothing on his costume changes much throughout this sequence other than his arms on that first little bit. So I think we're there. Let's pop up out of here. And this is a great example of where, by getting it chopped in as a pencil test, you could punch it up even a little bit more with the plastic tool. Once you got the ink and paint in there, you know, do you want to say, give him a little, cock his head just a little bit, just something to give it a little bit more life, and that's where I find the plastic tool really helps kind of take things to the next level. So now I'm going to hit the B key, and my typical habit would be to kind of go like that, crank this down, and I'm not really doing too much. I'm going to give it a little bit of smoothing and kind of split the difference between hard and soft and see how it goes. Alright, so N key, this is actual size. So at this point I'm going to pretend I'm just drawing on paper. Okay, the smoothing is feeling a bit aggressive. If I move my brush quickly, I don't need the smoothing as much. And when I have a good guide, I can move my brush quickly. So now when I draw, I tend to, as I always say, working from the known to the unknown, what I do is I tend to make a mark that I feel confident in, and then I go back and sort of patch things up. So to each his own, I suppose. There is one problem I just noticed. His costume, right here, there's a bit of an issue because his costume has these things I keep calling wingdingers. I don't have a name for them. I'm going to hit the M key, flip my canvas, just kind of measure across there. That's probably okay. Flip that back. Yeah, I was worried about that. I'm just going to erase it. I'm going to very much favor erasing and redrawing as opposed to trying to fix things. Okay, I'm just going to actually grab a line right here and split it right through the middle. So use these digital tools liberally. Alright, it makes sense to get your measurements correct. I don't need to connect all my lines up. That doesn't matter yet. That's too big. The jewel thing on his chest is a little bit big the way I drew it there. Okay. Now, I think we have a problem. Let me double check. My reference. Maybe not. I was thinking that leather part of his costume might have been a little too low. It is too low per the, when I look at the wide shot I had of him from earlier. Okay, so let's go back here, and we want to get this right because it's going to be reused. There's going to be a fair amount of drawing being drawings being copied in this sequence. So right, so this is actually more like boom, like this. And by the way, if that is the case, this has a shape that goes like that, and then this is basically his, where you see his neck. Okay, so this is wrong according to the art that I have. I'm gonna crank my smoothing way up so I can just, the basic width of it is closer to what I had the first time. And then there's a little piece that sort of connects the two like that. So obviously we've got a lot of leaks in our ink and paint here, so let's go through and try to patch up the leaks. Not a horrible way to work is to just kind of do this, go around the perimeter and just find the hiccups where they're going to appear. Okay, now boom, 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 boom. Okay, looks good, looks good. Da 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 da. Oh, the fun of ink and paint. Okay, here we gotta let a little bit of wrinklage sneak in. Let's go up here and see if we've got any leaks. Now, one thing you can do is go to your views and go to the fill check. And the fill check is telling me that we've got a leak. So there, the leak is fixed. But we still got some leaks that are going to occur within, like that. So it's a bit hard to watch, but frankly, inking in fill check mode can be quite useful. Okay, so let's go down here. Actually, let's hit the N key. Okay, so in this case, I am going to leave, what is this? Alt F. Let me hit, nope, Alt F goes to full screen. Okay. Yeah, in OpenToonz it used to be the Alt F turned fill check off and on. I'm going to do something here. I'm going to add a hotkey for that. Let's go Control Shift F. Yeah, that doesn't seem to be used for anything. So I'm going to go to my configure shortcuts and I'm going to go to fill check. Yep, and I'm going to go Shift Alt F, or I'm sorry, Control Shift F for fill check, so I can just turn it off and on real quick. That's quite useful. Just keep you from making a mess of things. Okay, this is actually supposed to sort of cut across like that. There's also an indication of a sort of reinforced part to the helmet. Going through and just looking at the prior art, and then there is a very, very gentle indication of a seam, but frankly, I don't know if that's going to work. I think what I'll do, just to make my life easier downstream, potentially, is back that off a little bit so it's going to be easier and quick to erase if I need to erase it. Because I'm not sure if maybe that should be actually drawn in one of the costume colors. So, okay, we got that. Now we can go ahead and deal with his face. Let me just think about this for a minute. Now, if we things aren't moving that much. I'm thinking I'll probably try to do some frame range fill work today. We'll see. Meaning, if you're gonna be making drawings that are essentially duplicates of one another, then it makes sense to do the the paint work first so that you don't have to go ahead and do all the filling on the copy, right? I'm just going to leave this a little bit loosey-goosey. Little bit loosey-goosey. Okay, so let's scooch down here. And the only thing that changes here is actually his eyes. So this is what I was talking about. I'm going to make a duplicate and immediately just hit the eraser. I'm not even going to think about trying to reuse stuff too much at this stage of the game. Alright, I'm hitting Control Spacebar so that I can nice smooth curves. I like it muy mucho. Not worrying about lip sync at this point, so Shift Alt R for me, if my mouse is over the drawing area, resets the rotation. N key. Okay, let's keep rocking forward. Rocking forward. Boom, boop, boom. Not too shabby. Now this is where one thing you can do is this little magnifying glass is not for magnifying the view. Actually, I think this is, yeah. This is for popping up the locator window. Okay, so then you put your mouse somewhere here on the page where you want to draw, and then the locator window actually lets you sneak around the drawing. And by the way, you can hit Shift Spacebar and zoom the locator out too if you want to kind of have a close view to use. I used to use this all the time actually in OpenToonz. And then when I went through my absolutely committed to Krita phase, I sort of kind of forgot about the old locator. But yeah, we're going to put an eye blink in here. So it's definitely useful, and obviously you can resize it a bit if you want to, and just gives you the ability to have both perspectives at the same time. Now, what I used to do when I used it a lot in OpenToonz was I would kind of just put my mouse over here somewhere where I wanted to work, but then jump to the locator, or to the locator to actually do the inking. It's really quite a useful tool. Boom, boom, boom. So there's a little wrinkle action going on. I tend to use the plastic tool quite a lot. Now there is a problem. If we go back to this drawing, probably what I should do here is grab all of this and paste it into the next drawing so that I'm not guessing. So I'm going to hit the S key and hit Control V, and as you can see, there's a little issue with this part. So this we could probably move like that, and we'll connect the dots later as far as the gaps. But then a little cleanup work here. So hopefully for you guys the locator view isn't too distracting. So it's really kind of pick your poison. Sometimes the locator's great. Other times I tend to want to just zoom in, maybe rotate the screen a bit, whatever. N key. Flip this. Yeah, that's what I thought. Shift Alt R. N key. That's better. Well, frankly, all of this, I wonder if I hit shift, can I add to my selection? Control C. S key, Control V. Okay. Now, kind of an instant red flag in that the feels like the body weight should shift a little bit, but I don't want to jump the gun. I want to trust my pencil test, and we'll make adjustments later if we need to, but oops, I didn't mean to do that. I grabbed the edge of that instead of the screen. Okay, so again, that's a one frame tween. So probably the thing to do here is hit the D key and then start erasing everything that's not 100% supposed to be in here. That should probably be gotten rid of, and then everything about his head should be gotten rid of. This I'll just move over a little bit and maybe a slight rotation. Okay, cool. So now we can get back to ink and paint. Boom, ba-doom, ba-doom, doom. Boom, ba-doom, ba-doom. Boy, this is going to go so fast that it's going to feel like a speed paint, even though it's not. This is actually real time. Got a little cleanup there. Zoom in. Hit E for eraser. Correct that. Oops, I missed a little piece. This is a little jumbly bumbly. There we go. N key to zip back out to normal perspective. Actual size. Get that in there. Again, zooming in. Tahoma knows enough to zoom into wherever you point. So if you point here, it's going to zoom into that. Alright, this is going to be erased. B key. So his arms are back in the down position. This is going to be like that. I think we probably have some latitude here in terms of how we put that in there, but I kind of feel like that's a little wrong actually. So let's go and clean. There's a little garbage here. Let's clean this garbage up. Garbage, garbage, garbage. This I'm not liking. I'm going to overrule. I'm going to overrule that one a little bit. This should actually fall under his chin situation like so. And now again, as I say, I'm going to go in and start fixing things up. Control Shift F. Once again, the main problem there, of course, being that it doesn't allow me anymore to see my pencil test. So that's slightly problematic. Okay, we'll let that kind of fall under chin. I'm gonna say let's run that up like that, and I think we're okay. Shift spacebar. Again, little bit of garbage there. N key to zoom back out. Okay, I like it. B key, so we'll basically put a little bit of wrinklage here to sort of indicate where the sleeves are happening. And now we can go in and 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm having to really go bananas on the drawing the eyeballs, or the pupils, I guess you'd say, because of the smoothing. The smoothing's cranked up to the point where, okay, so here we lost these things. When you know, when our attention is called to these sorts of things, it's good to, as Brian Tracy would say, do it now. Do it now. Don't wait. Don't procrastinate. No, do it now. Do it now. Love Brian Tracy. He's great. Great guy. Boom, boom, boom. And little Kevin Bacon nose thing going on. Boom, boom. And let's keep forging ahead. See if anything changes. Oh yeah, okay. Got it. So this will be fun. We want to get this. Okay, so now I don't want to hit the D key until I've zoomed out and made sure I've got everything right, which here we can see that I don't. Oops, that was wrong. Okay. Because otherwise you're going to have to go through and make corrections to a bunch of drawings that are all copies of one another, which is really problematic because the reality is I bumped into this. This is where Krita is pretty strong, because in Krita you can create a new layer that lays over top of the animated layer, and then whatever you put on that new layer will bake down into it. Not so much with Tahoma, so if you wind up leaving some leaks, or worse, you've got to draw a line repeatedly, it's just like there's no way you're going to do it exactly the same way multiple times. Now you do have a little bit of a fallback in Tahoma that I'll show you right here in half a second. Let's grab the E key and clean this up. Boom, boom, and boom. Okay, the fallback is that the selection tool does do a great job of perfectly letting you cut and paste from one cell to another. So S key, whereas in Krita, just doing this, just going Control C, Control V, will actually create another layer. Sometimes that's desirable, but it's often not. So here, I'm going to just rotate it a little bit, and I'm going to go Control C to cut it to the clipboard again, and then V, we can maybe make that little adjustment there. Now, it seems to me I saw a gap here. Yeah, right here. Whoops. Okay, so this is actually exactly what I was talking about. Watch the following. First of all, let's close off this neck area. Okay. There's a little hiccup there, so I'd rather just go in and clean it up properly. N key. Okay, and now the problem is that it's missing here. Okay, so this is exactly what I was talking about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the S key and grab this whole part that I know needs to duplicate. And what we should be able to do is hit S, Control V, and Tahoma does a very nice job of pasting it in without creating artifacts. Now we do have this artifact here, but that's because it was already there on the layer that I was pasting into. My point about that is that if I had to, like what I'm doing right here where I'm redrawing this little part, if you had to do that on several frames in a row, you're never ever going to draw it the same way twice. So that means that if you've got a drawing where not much changes and you had to go in and make corrections like that, you're going to introduce chatter in your animation. You're going to see this little area down here that's sort of chattering, and that's generally frowned upon. We frown upon chatter. Okay, this, again, one frame tween, so I'm actually going to say, yeah, I'm not even going to put that in there. This is a one frame tween. I'm not going to worry about his neck for one freaking frame. Now this all looks fine, with the possible caveat that the physics of this don't quite make sense. This line should be more like there. So this is something I've been doing more and more lately, is if you have to fix something, draw the fix, then erase. Don't erase first, then draw the fix. Okay, so I think what we have now is just the eyes. Right? So here we can go hit the D key to duplicate that frame. Hit the D key to duplicate that frame again. And then I think he went for 1 second. Okay. Here, what happens if we duplicate it again? That doesn't work. So it's got to be an adjacent frame with Tahoma. Boom. And then I believe it's just a snap to this new position. So that's frame 34. So we'll go down here to 33. And then we'll see. We may be able to come back to one of these earlier drawings and paste a great deal of it in, but we'll see. Okay, so there's that. Now what we need to do is just go in and edit his eyes and fix things up. So, da 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 da. Okay. B key, and boom, boom, boom. Next. Gotta love those sound effects, right? Again, I have to sort of draw it slowly because of the silly smoothing, which I don't want to have to go in and just like keep turning off and on. B key. Now here, I'm just gonna be real kind of loosey-goosey with the eyebrows. Next drawing. We're going back for one of those sort of anime style effects. And I think that's it. Okay. Okay. Rewind. What was this? Oh, I see. I'm off by one frame here. Control X. There we go. And then we've got this. All right, since he's, you know, let me make a dupe and see what we've got here to work with. I would say, yeah, let's make the dupe and then probably pull out all this stuff up top and see how things are looking. Yeah, that's probably okay. So this could probably be maybe tucked in just a little bit, and everything else is just ink time. S key, whoopsie, that's not what I meant to do. S key. The selection tool in Tahoma and OpenToonz is quite useful. I think in this case I'm actually going to flip the darn thing. Yep, that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to grab these little lines that are just like a texture basically and just straighten them up a little bit. Okay, now it's inking time again. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do 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 do. We're rocking, people. We're rocking. Do do do. Zoom in a little bit. There's this kind of squared off jaw, little hollowed cheekbones, the whole Kevin Bacon thing. What's missing? The neckline. And now it's time to patchy patchy poo. Patchy patchy poo, people. Okay, there's one other thing. I'm going to actually erase that so that I can take the selection tool right there and actually move that north just a little bit. Okay, B key is invoked. And now we're going to zoom way in and start fixing what's wrong. Okay, boom, 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 boom. This is erroneous. B key. This is actually wrong. Let me check this. Okay, we're gonna kind of get away with it here. Gonna kind of get away with it. But honestly, not quite buying this. I'm not quite buying it. Well, this is a great example of where, you know, you just forge ahead and then when you realize there's a glitch. Actually, I think we're okay. I thought it was going to be more problematic than it is. But I was just kind of looking at the positioning of all this stuff. Maybe it should shift around a little bit more. You know, is it the best thing I've ever done? Probably not. But I do think it's probably fine for the purposes of this shot. Okay, fixie. This is again, I'm drawing over it, then going back and cleaning things up. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, that looks good. Close that shape, clean up that, close that shape, This looks like we got a little garbage here. Maybe a little garbage there too. Okay, that's fine. Boom. That needs to have a line there. Whoop, just like that. That's going to slide down there. Boom. Okay. We're almost done. The inking part is almost complete. Zooming out a little bit here so I can kind of see what I'm doing better. And whoop. This guy is really kind of painfully oblivious to what the heck's going on around him. Little too much there. Okay, N key. And rewind. Back to here. Okay, the only thing I would say is at this point, Vespar needs to get back to kind of normalcy in terms of his characterization. I've taken a lot of liberties with him. And I'm hitting E for erase. Yeah, that's better. That's more proper characterization for Vespar. I mean, once he settles into his final pose, we want him to look right. So, Control-Shift-F. Aha! Thank you, Fill Check Tool, for showing me that there was a glitch. And there you go. Okay, everything looks good. Control-Shift-F. And let's save our work. Okay. Alright, so we got 6 people concurrently watching. We've been going for an hour and a half here on a shot that appears to be, what, 48 frames long, so 6 seconds-ish. Not too shabby. Let's go back here. Okay, so there's multiple ways we could deal with the color situation. One would be to find the TLV file for this particular shot, for example, and steal the palette that way. The other way would be to just use the old eyedropper on this. These would be all over the map here. So I am going to do something different. I'm going to go save all. And the last shot that used Vespar was 522. So I'm going to open up 522 so I can look and see what the TLV file is for Vespar. So I'm going to go down here into the sub-X sheet. Whoops. And there it is. And here's the palette. Now, I don't believe that I can copy these to the clipboard. And jq.tlv. So now, in another window, I'm going into the project's drawings folder. And I'm looking for jq. And there it is. And if I drag jq.tlv into here, there it is. And now we have Vespar's complete palette. We come over here, hit Control V, and then we do want to kind of change the main outline color. And at this point, happily, we can also see that, you know, as far as our characterization stuff, we're pretty spot on. Now, am I a silly goose to have not reused this drawing? Yeah, maybe. I'm going to delete it. Go to my panels, scene cast, and remove all unused levels. So now we've got a nice clean scene with the proper palette here. And we can go ahead and get our ink and paint done. Excuse me. So now what we talked about doing, just because it's going to be brutally fun to do so, is to try to use the frame range option for our paint. Okay, so I'm going to hit the fill tool. Last time I checked, I'm going to use close and fill. Yeah, at around 12 pixels is probably right. I want to use frame range, so let's use a frame range. Now last time I checked, doing frame range in normal mode doesn't work. And that's new. That's not cool, but it is what it is. So what we need to do is go into freehand mode, lasso whatever it is we're wanting to color, then go to the final frame and lasso that, and then see what Tahoma does with it. And it looks like Tahoma did nothing with it. So this is actually, yeah, this is not going to work. It painted that one. Oh boy, this is stupid. So just so you know, you guys, as far as I can tell, the frame range option in Tahoma, you know, it used to be cool and now it's stupid. And the reason it's stupid is because in OpenToonz, you just have to click a dot, and the dot needs to be, hey Kamara, the dot simply needs to be somewhere within the filled area. Well, it's really easy to pick a dot that happens to fall inside the filled area throughout a range of frames. It's much harder to draw a lasso around a complex shape, and as you see right here, right there, because the shape got bigger, the lasso that I drew is not going to encompass it. But the danger you have is that on an earlier frame, if you had drawn your lasso bigger, you might be encompassing some other area that you don't want to paint. So the idea of doing it with a dot makes way more sense. I am going to actually open up OpenToonz and see if the if OpenToonz does work the way I think it does. So we need to open up shot number 528 in OpenToonz and kind of see what happens here. Now the skin and the layout and everything in OpenToonz is going to be wrong, just so you know. So, but I'm going to give this a crack. Okay, so this is what, 528? 528.tnz. Boom. Okay, so there it is. And what I wanted to do is hit the fill tool. Let's go to the drawing frame. We got the right color. I want the fill tool, frame range, normal mode. So let's see if it works. I'm going to go click, and then I'm going to go here. I'm going to go click. Okay, and as we can see, it still made a mistake, unfortunately. You can always, if you're in frame range mode, you can do what I just did too, which is just hit click twice. Okay, so, you know, it's not really perfect. Let's try another one. Let's go from frame 1 and click here. And let's go to the last frame and click here and see what happens. So it's not, again, it's not perfect, but it's certainly, it's way the heck better than what I'm seeing in Tahoma. I mean, it almost kind of sort of worked. Now you do have to go back and just do a little cleanup, a little due diligence. Now I'm going to go ahead and, gosh, save scene as. I'm going to do a little check here. I want to be careful. 528. I'm going to save this as 528A because I don't know for sure that if I reload this in Tahoma that maybe there's something about the latest version of OpenToonz that's going to, well, okay, strike that. The TLV file, if I save it, that's what's going to break Tahoma anyway. I don't think I'm going to take my chances. Let's come back here and just continue forward. And so the bottom line is that in Tahoma, as far as I'm concerned, frame range is broken. Doesn't work anymore. Used to be so cool. Now it's not. So there you go. Life happens. All right. Double checking my colors here. Yeah, I can actually see on these other shots I did that I'm looking on the other screen. I've actually got some issues in the color scheme anyway, but I'm going to go to normal mode, forget about frame range, and just start doing it the hard way. And hopefully we won't bump into any leaks. Not meaning leaks as in onions, but meaning leaks as in colors spraying out throughout our hole. And by the way, be aware that you can do a drag operation. You can just drag your mouse like that. Here it's not the best example because it'd be easy to miss and accidentally fill in his face, but so you could go like that. Here we're probably going to have to use freehand mode to lasso it. Okay, not too bad. Color, color, color. Do. This is where frame range would be quite useful. So again, it'd be frame range, freehand, and what we would do, let me see if we can hit shift and expand this. 1, okay, that didn't quite work. 2, 3, yeah, it doesn't work. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning, and we'll just deal with this. So we'll go here, and now we go to the end, and frame range is confused. Basically, it can't, I have to draw two shapes or it's not going to decide to understand that this is the first click and not the second click. So, you know, I just for the record, you know, for some people doing some kinds of animation, ability is extremely important. And as far as I can tell, it's pretty stupid at this point in history. But there I got it to work, as you can see. So, all right, so there are worse things. Let's go to the end, draw another lasso, and as you can see, if I use the lasso mode, I can make it work. So, as far as the, oh yeah, this is actually, so I need to draw a lasso around that, and there. Okay, so now this is going to have a problem. I can see it. I can see it now. Let's zoom way into that. Yep, right there. B key. You got to patch that hole or you're going to have a problem. Yep. N key, fill tool, rewind. I'm going to grab that. Sorry, I've been hitting the L key instead of the forward arrow key, or I should say the greater than symbol. Okay, and it switched colors and everything is the wrong color. So let's do it again. 1, 2. So for very broad swaths of color, areas that don't kind of break the rules at all, it kind of sort of works. See, the problem is, well, like I can't select this whole area, but what I have to do is basically do this. 1, 2. That worked pretty well. Okay, I'm going to try it again. 1, 2. Okay, so that worked pretty well. Enough complaining, Dave. Alright, so I'm going to get the flesh tone in there, snap back to the beginning, and hopefully this will actually do a good job. We'll see. Nah, it looks like... Okay, and it looks like also, by the way, that look, we've got anomalies. So the whole thing with fill operations is there's plenty of situations. Okay, so now the fill operation, okay, strike what I was about to say, it switched colors on me. For me, the bane of animation is what I'm doing right now, because it's so often problematic. But you know, Tahoma's okay. It's actually okay. I need a color for the whites of his eyes, by the way. So let's make that brutally red. because what we need to do here is take the B key, and we're going to have to create some borders here. And then once we've got these borders in place, we'll fill his eyes and then change the color back to slightly off-white. Makes sense? So basically the price you pay for really embracing more hand-drawn cell animation, frame by frame kind of thing, is everything does take longer. It just does. So sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not worth it. You can only know sometimes in hindsight though. So fill operation, boom boom, Mr. Red Eyes. Okay, and as you can see, we're going to actually have to do a freehand fill there. We could do a freehand here. The freehand fill mode is definitely quite useful. And I think you could lasso the whole darn thing. Yep. Okay, cool. And now we'll just kind of roll that back to slightly off-white, and now we can deal with this flesh tone. Fill operation. This we should be able to do in normal mode. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, now we go in and find the problems. Ba-doom, boom, ba-doom, doom. And we're probably going to have to use the lasso for that one. Yep. Lasso, lasso, lasso. This will obviously be in shadow. It looks kind of stupid the way it is right now, but because of the way I do shadows, there's no reason to worry about it right now. So again, freehand tool. Boom, boom, boom. Right here's a glitch. There's a glitch. There's a bunch of glitches. This should be probably lasso just to make sure that we don't have erroneous white space peeking through. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's hit the old N key, zoom out, and see what we've got. Is this a smart raster layer? Yep, sure is. Okay, I've actually done that mouse drag by accident and filled in what was not intended. It's good to know you can do it on purpose. Yep, well, like I said, the bane of animation is not ink and paint, but basically paint. The gap closer tool is an improvement. The gap closer on Tahoma 1.2 is definitely a step forward, which I'm happy to see. As I say, the frame range tool or option, as far as I can tell, is broken, because by far the most useful way to use it is with normal mode. So you can just click a dot, and as long as that dot on both of the extreme frames lies within your fill area, everything fills up quite nicely. You know, unless there's a leak or something, obviously. So, all right. So at this point, we got a little shadow color we need to probably put in there. So I'm gonna, what I think I'll do is hit the R key and sample that color. R key, I said. Sample that color. And then create a darker version of it. Fill tool, normal mode, and then let's just find that hiccup right there and just fill it in, and then we can just kind of feel the where the value needs to be. Cool beans. There's one hiccup right there. Fill tool, again, freehand mode. I really need to see if I can set a hotkey for that, for switching modes. Okay, that gets us pretty close to where we need to be. We'll be able to punch it up quite a lot with the shadows. Therefore, let's start fiddling with lip sync. Okay, so we got a couple options here. why don't we try a vector shape? Just because then we'll be able to have the old autofill thing going on. And the question is, how's it going to draw the shapes for us? Is it going to interpolate it? I've got the accuracy about halfway, and I've got the smoothing down all the way, so it should be pretty close to what I draw. You know, not bad, not bad. And then we can just adjust the color as opposed to the transparency or something. And that feels about right. So let me just remember what he does here. Any girl, he says, for this, it's one. That one's going to be kind of hard to see. That I didn't really like. Lasso fool. Oh, hey Darren. Just cut up and saw you had issues with the frame range tools. You say it didn't work at all with the normal mode. No. Yeah, with the lasso fool, it does work with the lasso tool, or as we would say, in freehand mode. The frame range tool does work. The frame range tool, as far as I can tell, in Tahoma 1.2 does not work at all in normal mode, which clearly is pretty much what you'd want to be using most of the time with frame range. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just slap this down to here. And see how it goes. Alright. Onion skins off. So yeah, I put it in normal mode and then frame range mode. Click somewhere. Click somewhere else, and the last frame, nothing happens. So I noticed that last week, or a while ago. I noticed that. Okay, so I'm just taking these guides and getting them back off my screen, so they're not gumming up the works. I like it. I like it. I actually think I did a okay job. Okay, so now, and again, we can always punch it up a little bit with some plastic tool, right? A little bit of okay, I just made a mistake. Well, this underscores something Darren mentioned the other day, which is having a filled shape tool for smart raster layers would be quite cool. But for the moment, we'll use vector layers. I actually tried, I think it was yesterday, day before, tried going ahead and using a vector level for ink, and it just kind of the way it's always been. It really didn't work for me. I mean, there's just not enough control over the lines, frankly. Now the good side is you can go back and edit the lines, obviously, after the fact. So there's certainly ways to make it work if you're determined to do so. That's for sure. So we don't want to suggest it's a lost cause. Looks like the postman's coming back. So well, apparently another which is so comically absurd that it's just, if it wasn't so tragic, it'd be funny. But yeah, I didn't realize until today that it would appear that Chief Justice John Roberts kind of has something to do with that, because the key provision of the 1968 Voting Rights Act that President Johnson signed was the key provision of it forced, if a state wanted to change the way they handled elections, they would have to essentially get it approved at the federal level before they made legislative changes that were, because, you know, for the obvious reasons that people were concerned about. And sure enough, because of Roberts, who I assume wrote the majority opinion, that key provision of the 1968 Voting Rights Act was effectively nullified, so that the states didn't have to seek that approval on the basis of a principle that essentially had to do with states' rights, a principle that Roberts cited in his opinion that is a principle that doesn't actually exist in constitutional law, really. I mean, it is a principle, but yeah, and so because of that, that's why you're seeing these draconian measures that are being passed left and right by states that have Republican majorities in the in their state legislatures. It is not a great thing, in my humble opinion. Not a great thing. Okay, so we'll run this to here. So, and the problem with, I guess I'll hit the D key here. And the problem with the with simply getting the new voting rights bill through Congress is that the legislature, because of just the rules of the Senate, cannot do it without 60 votes. So it's a bit of a pickle. Now the solution to the pickle is, of course, to get rid of the filibuster. So I don't know if you guys find any of that interesting. And if you're offended by any discussion of matters socio-political, you know, I would actually respect that and put a cork in it, because it's not that important to me to necessarily discuss these things publicly. But my general sentiment is that what we're seeing happening in the state legislatures, particularly, just, you know, if I get going on it, it'll the dangers will turn into a rant here. But I mean, it's really crazy how this is what I was kind of talking about earlier when I was talking about painting, and how we're so subject to our mythologies because of when we talk about the symbols we create in our mind that cause us to not draw as well as we want to, because we're not drawing what we see, we're drawing what we think or feel about what we see. And the way it's, hey Soda Pop, you know, when Soda Pop, when I was talking about you being kind of in my age range and all that, I think it was Max Power I was thinking about. I think it's Max who's like 50-ish and in England. So anyway, I would say this could probably be a dupe, and then we'll just erase. Yeah, that's probably okay. B key. This shadow is going to be a little harsher this way. Yeah, I think I'll put the wraps on the old political commentary, because I feel so strongly about it that it would totally take over the whole thing here. Take over, baby. Expressionism is art based on sentiment and feeling, isn't it? Yeah, and in fact, I kind of mentioned that one of the ironies of, you know, okay, so the way the eraser works here is kind of punitive. I wish we had a lasso type eraser for vector levels, but we don't. Anyway, yeah, I mean, we're talking about cartoons, so it's inherently an abstraction, you know, and so there's a bit of a tug of war between our desire to draw well and the fact that what we're trying to draw, at least with cartoons, doesn't involve accurate rendering of reality anyway. But here's the thing. I think everything I said about it is utterly valid, though, and here's why. Because the problem for most people isn't the inability, is the mental part. It's not the inability to accurately draw an animal or recreate a picture of something. That's not the problem. The problem is what's going on in your mind. So you're going to bump into the same exact problem in accurately rendering your abstraction as well. So for me, when I'm drawing or painting or whatever, and you see it sometimes when I'm doing some work and I start making little sounds like, sometimes I even breathe heavy. It's kind of funny, but it's because I get in the zone where I'm really tapping into my brain to make sure that I see it on the page before I actually put the stylus on the page. That's my goal. My goal is to really see accurately what it is I intend to do and then successfully do it. So that could be a cartoon or an abstraction just as much as a realistic drawing. For most people, practicing realistic drawing is a better way to tune that muscle for the simple reason that you have something you can measure against to know whether you've succeeded or not. That's the whole hiccup there. If you don't have some sort of way to measure and determine, yes, I did this well, then you don't know. And then what happens is, normally with cartoonists, and I did it myself, certainly. It's why all my drawings back in, when I was in my 20s looked like I was trying to be John Buscema or whatever, Frank Frazetta or something like that. And it's because what happens is you develop symbolic habits, and especially if you have key artists that you respect and admire and wish you could draw like them, then what you do is you try to get a look or a feeling that emulates the people you like. And then what happens is you get lucky, and you start to figure out how to draw. The thing I talked about was drawing hands like this, always this really claw-like dramatic. Why are you always drawing hands like that, Dave? Well, the reason was because I saw it, so it was so prevalent in Frazetta's paintings, and it looked cool. So I just tended. And once I figured out that I could do something that kind of sort of looked like what I enjoyed in the Frazetta painting, then I started repeating that over and over and over. And the problem with that is you never learn how to draw. All you learn how to do is the small collection of symbols that you've learned that happen to work. Now for some people, you can get away with that and build a style on something that's pure abstraction and very cheeseball. In fact, the other example I gave this morning is Matt Groening with The Simpsons. Obviously, there's nothing realistic about the way The Simpsons are drawn. So it works. So it's not like a rule, but my general assumption would be that most people that are here probably want to learn how to draw better. I mean, in addition, they may be into animation, but I suspect most of the people who ever come here are not yet satisfied with their own ability to draw. I could be wrong about that. I know that's true about Darren. I know Darren, is trying really hard to improve his drawing, and that's a good thing. So am I, frankly. Tom, I haven't been to the Frazetta Museum. I've seen, like videos of it and stuff, but I've never actually been there. It would be really cool to, it would definitely be cool to check it out, just to see the texture of the oil paint, in real life, and also to see how big they really are. I don't think they're actually that big. I mean, I think that many of his paintings are only like, you know, like 18 by 24 at the largest, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure. I know there's some biggies in there, but okay, so now what we want to do is I'm going to check my level settings, and oh, I'm sorry, I want to check my scene settings. Enable column filter and transparency for rendering. I'm going to turn that on so that I can then turn this down to, say, probably 14% in this case. And as you can see, once it renders, obviously we've got a little problem here, but once it renders, the colors are flattened out to a single shade of gray, which is exactly what we wanted. So that's looking pretty good. Definitely true about me and art. A lot of improvement to make, but it's fun to learn it. Well, Maria, you have a refreshingly positive attitude. Refreshingly positive. Okay, so one thing as I'm just looking at this that I'm thinking is that probably the whites of his eyes are a little hot. Probably something more like that would be better. Okay, save all. Now what we're going to do is, this is going to be nothing but fun. First thing I'm going to do is delete the pencil test. I'm going to have to pull up the background. Let me look at this for half a second. Okay. I think I'm going to cheat. I think I'm going to try cheating. We'll see if this works. But I am going to hit the tilde key to solo this layer. Okay, so this was just cut and pasted across the clipboard, so there's no reason I can't paint into it and do whatever I want with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the B key, and I'm just going to, I'm sorry, the R key, then the B key. And I'm just going to go ahead and cheat this out. I'm going to cheat this out a bit. I'm just going to go ahead and go like this and paint him out of there. Okay? Well, today, doing more painting, background painting and whatnot in Tahoma directly, mainly because I am embracing the idea of fewer value levels anyway. You could even do it, actually, you could do a background painting with a vector level. Smack that in like that. And maybe what we'll do here, I guess I need to, let's see what this does. Yeah, that's not horrible, but it's not good enough. I'm going to have to hit the R key and go ahead and, wrong brush, sorry. R key. Okay. So this idea of a limited value range, particularly for backgrounds, is becoming something that seems quite sensible to me. Okay, so this drawing here can be deleted. That was basically for reference. Stretch this guy down to here. Now we're going to go back to our bloom. Okay, so let's crop this to the camera. Turn this back on. Okay. Yeah. I am going to turn these levels back on, and I'm going to go ahead and do my bloom thing again. So now we're going to go into the effects bloom, then the one baked into Tahoma. All right. So now, if I want to really check this, let me see something here. Okay, you see the banding? This is what I've been talking about. That banding is horrible. Horrible banding. My goodness, that's bad. Okay, so now I'm going to hit F3 so I can go in and tune the settings. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and explode the macro so that I can then go to my level adjustment and put that straight into the output and see what I've got here. And as you can see, I can see what the problem is. A highlight along the edge of his helmet, but remember, we're probably going to be using the body highlight effect as well. So how would we do that? Well, if we spread out the full dynamic range and start pumping the contrast this way, that pretty much got us where we wanted to be. That pretty much did it. Okay, so now when we pump this back through here, It should be, yeah, that's nice. Okay, so now we can adjust the output of it, probably something like that, and now we get that nice bloom that we like so well, right? Because it's only being affected by the outside light. Now I want to make it even better though, and the way I'm going to make it even better is by taking column 2 and adding the body highlight effect. So that's light, body highlight. Okay, so now he has that effect. Let's turn off that connection so that we only see our output. So we're not adding the bloom over top of it. And now let's dial in the body highlight a bit. Okay, so the transparency, let's see, fully opaque. Okay, so now what I'm thinking is for this particular shot, let's change this from 22 to probably about 15. Yeah, not bad, because that introduced a little bit of a bleed over here, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to put about 12 on the Y. Yeah, let's just sneak that up there a little bit. Whoopsie poo. I like that little grab there. So now what we should see, if we look at this, we should see that, you see what's going on now? Now the those edges are being encompassed by the bloom effect. So we can really clamp this down and get his face out of it. That's awesome. That's what we want. Now we add these two together and we can really control this bloom. Boom. See how bright that is? Isn't that cool? Now, this is a little strong. I need to crank the transparency back up. But then we can just dynamically ease it out until things look about right. Probably something like that. So we're catching, you can see right here, you see how that we're catching the bloom and a little bit of a glow around there? That's pretty good. Alright, so is there anything else? Well, yeah, why don't we add a gradient to the whole scene just because we think it's pretty. So I'm going to add a smart raster level. Hello, Tahoma. Probably be a good time to save my work, by the way. File, save all. Boy, am I getting a lot of mileage out of that bloom effect. That's crazy. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is grab my airbrush and just go to solid black, hit the B key, and I want to make this huge. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? Isn't that pretty? I sound like Bob Ross, right? Oh, that's nice. Okay. You say, Dave, why did you do that? Well, what did you do that for? I'll show you. Okay. So now what we're going to do is F3, and in our effects, we've got over top of everything. So we're going to go boop, 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 insert, layer blending, INO, overlay mode. And now, what you will see is it just adds a little bit of a gradient quality to the art. Now I want to punch it up even a little bit more. So I'm going to take my brush, lower this down a bit, and actually I'm feeling like I want to see a little bit more action in the in Vespar's like skin, face, blah 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 blah, and certainly down here as well on the gold thing. Okay, so now if you notice that the My Paint brushes don't really give you quite the dynamic range you were hoping for, I'm talking about in the airbrush, because the way the airbrush works is it's going to smack down a really light circle, and then it's going to smack down another really light circle, really really light, and then they're going to build up on each other, and it gives you that effect of an airbrush. It's not that great, and the way you could make it better if you want to, here in the if we look at this, it's probably hard to see. This actually looks pretty smooth, but Just a note is you could always take this overlay level and just stick a blur in there. Just stick a blur in line, and then it's going to smooth it out a little bit. Smooth out your airbrush painting. So I'm pretty happy with this shot, actually. I'm going to check my output settings, and it is not set. So Dave, you silly goose. So this should be plus scenes 528 render. Nope, you can't use capital letters. Under the hood, and I guess I'll use a proper Windows style slash since I'm trying to be a good boy. Under the hood, Tahoma, which is really, it's Qt, the underlying development platform, seems to use Linux style file handling under the hood, meaning that it appears that these little dialogues and whatnot are case sensitive, and if you don't make it upper or lowercase consistent with what's already in your file system, it'll actually create additional folders and things like that. So yeah, save and render. So that should save my scene and render it, and I think after I go ahead and check this out, I'm going to probably call it good for this session. Whether this session has been a total win or not, I'm not quite sure. It definitely, when I do more frame-by-frame animation, the whole time footprint definitely is bigger. But you know, if it looks great, that's the most important thing, right? So there's 528, and we're gonna put this in no resampling. Okay, so there's Vespar. Delete that. The next shot's gonna be Tianara, and so now I'll switch back to here and turn on the preview and just kind of see what we get. You know, I like what I see as far as the visual quality. Okay, so by the way, for your guys' purposes, I'm going to turn it to full res. But yeah, I would say that the visual quality is excellent. Holy crap, that's some of the best stuff I gotta say, Tahoma's been coming through for me, because that looks amazing, actually. The gradient helps. I do see some banding in it, but I don't think that my audience is going to criticize that too much. But that is, I can't argue with that. That looks really crisp, really nice. So, yeah, there you go. I think I'm going to call it good, and we'll come back and continue with TNR here a little bit later. Not sure how much later. I got to look at what else I've got going on today, but I think this shot's been great because it's thrown in everything but the kitchen sink. We did a pencil test. We did a background in Tahoma. We learned how to use a gradient to punch up your color on your overall render. Learned how to add a bloom effect so that you get this gorgeous glowing around the edges. Learned how to use the body highlight tool. Learned how to do lip sync with a vector level, just using closed shapes. Same thing with shadows. I'd say you can't beat it. The only thing I'm wondering is, I don't think I ever went outside the lines, actually, with my shadows. So I never did have to, yeah, for column 4, I never even did either mat it out or use multiply INO. Because when I was drawing my shapes, I just stayed inside the line. So it turns out it didn't really matter. So anyway, yeah. Goodbye, and you guys have a great day. Maybe I'll see you more later today. If I continue working, whether I'll stream or not remains an open question. But I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. There will